great pleasure to welcome you here this evening and to welcome our special guest, Colm Toibín, blessed amongst women this evening. He's surrounded by his friend of long standing, his former literary agent and his French editor, Maggie Doyle from Enniscorthy, County Wexford, and his translator of long standing, his translator from the start, Anna Gibson. Welcome. His play, The Testament of Mary, a monologue that earned 3 Tony Award nominations on Broadway, and later, when released as a novel, was shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize in 2013. Here, the elderly mother of Jesus is simmering with rage over the fate of her son. In April 2013, The Testament of Mary opened on Broadway with Fiona Shaw, directed by Deborah Warner, and was nominated for a Tony Award for Best New Play. It's been performed in Barcelona in a Spanish production with the actress Blanca Portillo. And in 2013, it was released as an audiobook with Meryl Streep. We're delighted to welcome Colm here today as he visits Paris on the occasion of the opening in French of his play Le Testament de Marie in the Théâtre de l'Odéon, directed by the extraordinary Deborah Warner and with the great French actress Dominique Leblanc in the role of Mary.
In 2000, I gave a course at the New School in New York called Relentlessness. I thought it was, the New School at the time, well, still is a sort of cutting-edge place where a lot of hipster students come in from Brooklyn, and if you gave a course called Melancholy Irish Literature, they wouldn't come. You know, so I thought relentlessness might work for them. And sure enough, they all came and looked at me, and then I had to sort of think of texts. And some of the texts we used were from the Greek canon, Medea, Electra, and Antigone. And we looked at the way in which power and powerlessness work against each other in the Greek theatre. That the more the character is powerless, the more the voice is filled with texture. So that when in Antigone, Creon speaks, the king, it's like legislation, it's dry, it's got no flavour, it's like an order. But when Electra speaks, it's filled with tension, it's filled with ingredients. You don't know what she's going to say next, she takes over. So that powerlessness gives her voice a power, and so too with Electra, and so too with Medea. And so out of that, I began to think about ways in which you could use in the voices of figures who had been powerless in the past, and also the sensibilities of figures who did not seem to have moved out of the shadows, that you could get a great sort of richness. I mean, that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is that I was brought up by women, and that my mother had 2 younger sisters who were in the house a lot. My father had a sister who was in the house a lot, and I have 2 older sisters, and really, they were always saying something really interesting. And even if they were talking about a coat that one of them almost bought, it would be quite interesting how she almost bought it, and what colour it was, and why she didn't buy it in the end. And when you go downstairs, and the men are just sitting there talking about some goal that was almost scored on Sunday. The saying was almost a good goal. And the other man would say, the next goal was almost a good goal as well. You think, this is the dullest conversation I've ever heard. I mean, Beckett was a social realist down here. You know, and then you go back upstairs and they're all still talking about the coat. Well, whatever way they're talking, it's really interesting.
Just one question about Mary. How did you build your own version of the story? Because almost nothing is known about her. There are contradictory versions of what is known, where she died, where she ended her days. Ephesus is like you, or maybe Jerusalem. There is a Mary's house in Gethsemane as well, and all other things, where she was born, was she married or wasn't she? How did you construct your own version?
From a number of things, I went to Ephesus, which is now in Turkey, and was in Greece. And it was in December, and there was no one else in the hotel except me. And I would go out every day to look at the ruins and to look at the statues and the archaeology, and come back, and they would feed me at around 6 and then leave me, really want to clear the table at 7. I couldn't understand Turkish, so I couldn't watch TV. So I was in my room on my own. But what was interesting for me was the idea of someone coming from a provincial place, that if Mary had come there, to the idea of the grandeur of the place, of the statues, that all of this would have been really impressive. But what I was also became interested in was someone who has not spoken before, who has not described all of this before, anyone looking at the idea of traumatic experience, and someone who keeps it in and holds it. And then when she's old, she has nothing to lose. She has nothing to fear anymore. And in one given time, perhaps at night, she speaks only once. So the length of the book is essential, that you must be able to read it in one sitting, as she said it once. And she did not say it again. And so that what came from her has a particular sort of intensity and seriousness and urgency, because it must be spoken once. Even if no one is to hear it, she must say it. She must go over it once. And I was thinking about ideas of fear, that she is in fear in certain ways. And I'd also, nothing ever comes from one single source. I had been spending a lot of time, for various reasons, with the South African novelist Nadine Gordimer. And Nadine Gordimer had that lovely fearlessness that arose from her time in the ANC, from standing up to the white South African government and coming out the other side, and never having been imprisoned, but always the sense that she could have been. I listened to her very carefully. Of course, she was also Jewish and immensely literate and careful with every word, weighing up every word. And so I studied the sound she made, her voice. I think she must have wondered, why is this Irish guy just listening to me, watching me so carefully? Well, it was because I needed her really badly for this book. And I hope she doesn't mind, Nadine. But so that all of those things came together in the creation of not as much a character as a voice, but not a disembodied voice, as a voice fully embodied, as it were. That was the idea.
To me, being a writer, it's a voyage of discovery. It's being alive. You are questioning and you are moving on to discover what the real meaning of life is. The word, this wonderful thing, needs a capital letter. You become aware of the power and the range of the word, and then you want to do your own little experiment with the word. The novel is a kind of journey which is mapped out. I always know the beginning and the end, but how it's going to get there may change while I'm writing.
So this play began because I was talking about the idea that that the story of Mary and the crucifixions seemed to me almost like a lost Greek play in some of its contours. And someone said, will you write that? And the answer was, yes, of course I'll write that. Anything to get away from Nora Webster. And so too with Brooklyn. In the middle of the whole thing, I just saw there was a tiny passage in Nora Webster. And I can make something from this. So that Nora Webster was interrupted all the time, almost by necessity, as I kept working out ways of handling a story which was so personal, so filled with the contours of memory, and so difficult to do because there was no inherent, because it was like a line. And what I had to do with the line was sort of list the line and see if I could make a shape for it, rather than it being merely this and this and this and this, to try and see if I could find a pattern in the story. So in a way, all I was doing in those years was writing Nora Webster. The other things were just small interruptions, ways of getting away from the main task.
In the Testament of Mary, you have 2 very beautiful pages about domestic bliss. the morning of the Sabbath when they go, she watches her husband and her son go to the synagogue.
Yeah, it was added quite late in the book where I wanted her to say, I want a time back. I don't want to be here now. I want to bring time backwards, which I thought is one of the things that happens with grief, where you say, I wish it was 2 years ago. I wish it was last week. And I wanted her to have an image of her husband coming from the synagogue with their son, and the idea that we're going to have this day of introspection. You know, I was talking to Jewish friends about the idea of the Sabbath and how much that matters, having a day of introspection and silence. Thank you. And so that is something she remembers vividly, because it's so lost that she thinks, I want it back. That is what I want. I do not want to be here now. I do not want what has happened to have happened. And so that is in a way part of what gives her the tone in the book, the fact that she would do anything to bring time, to push time back, that nothing has been resolved, nothing has been redeemed for her.
You're talking about tone there, Colm, and I think at one stage you said that when you were writing it, writing the Testament of Mary initially, you were writing it for a woman's voice, for an actress's voice.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
Go, yeah. So, and then, having written the play, which appeared in Dublin, I think in the Dublin Theatre Festival in 2011, you then used that as a basis for the novel.
Yeah, that's what happened where I mean, I was foolish enough to be just talking about all of this, and unfortunately the director of the Dublin Theatre Festival was standing there. I mean, I'm not making this up, this is Dublin, it's a Christmas party, and I'm talking about lost Greek plays. I'm going on about this at length. And then I'm saying there's one Greek play we could get back, and someone says, what's that? And I said, well, it's the story of Mary. It's Mary as a Greek figure. And Lachlan Deegan, who was the director, just said, will you write that for us? And so I did. But the problem of the theatre, if you're a novelist, is there's no national library where the theatre goes. When, in other words, I believe in libraries. The idea that, or even a bookshop or people's houses. One night in the theatre, it was a Sunday night, I was standing at the bar after the play, and a number of men came up the stairs, and they looked like undertakers to me. I said, who are those guys? What are those guys doing? They're here to dismantle the set. It was the last night, it was over. I thought, all right, so this is it. So we just all walk home. Well, good to meet you, see you all. This is like breathing on glass. Someone has just wiped the glass. And whereas if you write a book, I mean, then it will go into the National Library and someone will be able to get it in the future. Even if not many people want it, someone will maybe want it. And as I walked up through Dublin that night, I was feeling really lost. I thought, I know what I can do. Because I had written so many versions of it and so many drafts. I have everything there. I had written a lot of it in longhand in notebooks. I'm going to get everything out tomorrow morning really early. I'm going to start again. I'm going to write a book. And in this book, because we have been, collaboration is great. It's wonderful working with actresses. And it's almost wonderful working with directors. And, sometimes as the writer, you feel you're the only person not needed. You were talking about the Oscars. I went to the Oscars as the novelist who wrote the film. Well, you should see where I was sitting. They couldn't get a seat further enough back for me, away from the action. There was no red carpet. You went in by a side door and got pushed along and stuff. So it's like that in the theatre sometimes when the director and the actress and the lighting person, the designer, everyone's taken over, and you're like, I should just go home. But no, you can't go home because someone wants a different line written. This line is not working. And so it's wonderful getting home on your own when it's all over, with full autonomy, with no collaboration. If I want this to happen, it's happening here. If I want to cut this, it's being cut here. And so there was a lovely relief about it. And that really continued until Deborah Warner, who's directing the play here, came along again to say, look, we'd love to do this, but there's another way it could be done, with perhaps if you could come and work with us, which sounded sometimes like for us. And you know, that was exciting some days, and other days I realized that, of course, the theatre is not only its collaboration, but it actually is, the light is on the actress. And the director's job is to make that work, and your job is just to provide some ingredients for what is a collaborative art. And that can have its moments of difficulty. I mean, you can feel quite small, and if you don't feel small, someone will be sure to make you feel small. And then you can claim full credit for everything that's happened, which is sort of nice too.
Which brings us nicely to the book and the fact that the book is yours until the book is translated. And does it continue to be yours? So we're going to ask Anna Gibson to read a little piece in French from the Testament of Mary, followed by a different piece read by Colm. And then we...
Lazarus is dead. He's been 4 days in the ground. He has 2 sisters, you remember, Martha and Mary. Marthe est allée trouver Marie qui pleurait auprès de la tombe. Marie s'est présentée à son tour devant mon fils et lui a affirmé qu'il avait le pouvoir de faire revenir son frère. Devant les larmes de Marie, il a pleuré lui aussi, car il avait connu Lazare toute sa vie et l'avait aimé comme nous tous. Il l'a accompagné jusqu'à la tombe fraîchement recouverte de terre. Un murmure a parcouru la foule qui les avait suivis. Certains se sont mis à crier que s'il était capable de guérir les malades, de faire marcher les infirmes et de rendre la vue aux aveugles, alors il pouvait ressusciter les morts. Il est resté un long moment silencieux. Puis, dans un souffle, il a ordonné qu'on ouvre la tombe. Marthe a poussé un cri, terrifiée d'avoir été exaucée contre toute attente. Elle a hurlé qu'ils avaient assez souffert, que le corps s'en tirait, qu'il serait déjà putréfié après ce temps passé sous terre. Mais mon fils est resté imperturbable. La foule a attendu, fascinée, tandis qu'on ouvrait la tombe et qu'on commençait à ôter la terre meuble qui couvrait Lazare. Quand le corps est apparu, la foule a eu un mouvement de recul. L'horreur et la peur se lisaient sur tous les visages, sauf chez Marthe et Marie. Mon fils a prononcé ces mots. Lazare, sors. La foule s'est rapprochée. C'est à ce moment que les oiseaux ont cessé de chanter et qu'ils se sont retirés du ciel. Marthe m'a dit que le temps lui-même s'était comme suspendu. Alors, au cours de ces 2 heures, rien n'a grandi, rien n'a pu naître, rien n'est mort ni ne s'est fané de quelque façon que ce soit. Lentement, le corps sali d'argile et recouvert de bandelettes a remué de façon incertaine au fond de la tombe, comme si la terre le poussait doucement par en dessous, puis le rendait quelques instants à l'oubli avant de le pousser de nouveau, telle une étrange créature nouvelle venant à la vie en se secouant et en se tortillant. Ses bandelettes l'entravaient, son visage était recouvert d'un linge. Et voilà qu'il bougeait et se retournait comme un enfant dans la fraîcheur du ventre maternel qui sait que son temps est compté et qu'il doit se frayer un passage vers le monde. Déliez-le et laissez-le aller, a dit mon fils. 2 hommes se sont approchés alors, 2 voisins. Ils sont descendus dans le trou sous le regard de la foule silencieuse. Ils ont soulevé Lazare et ils l'ont délivré. Il était debout à présent, un simple linge autour des reins. La mort ne l'avait pas changé. Quand ses yeux se sont ouverts, il a tourné la tête vers le soleil avec un étonnement infini. Il a regardé le ciel. Il ne semblait pas voir la foule. Il proférait des sons. Ce n'étaient pas vraiment des paroles, plutôt des cris étouffés ou des gémissements. La foule s'est écartée. Lazare s'est avancé au milieu d'elle, sans regarder quiconque, entouré par ses sœurs qui ont commencé à le conduire vers leur maison pendant que chacun alentour demeurait pétrifié et silencieux. Et mon fils aussi, m'a-t-on dit, pétrifié et silencieux. Lazare pleurait.
And a few days later, then Lazarus appears, and Mary actually gets to meet him. You know, he comes with his sisters to the house. Lazarus stood in the doorway and then moved quietly into the room. When he sighed, all of us moved towards him, and it was then, just then, that the opportunity came. And it was the only one I had, and I think it may have been the only opportunity anyone had to ask him. It was the semi-darkness of the room, the stillness of the air, and the fact that all of us four women, would know to keep silent about what we should not speak of. There were a few seconds in which any one of us could have asked him about the cave full of souls where he had been. Was it a place of massive, obliterating darkness? Was there light, of wakefulness, or of dreams, or of deep sleep? Were there voices, or was there pure stillness, or some other sound like the dripping of water, or sighs, or echoes? Did he know anyone? Did he meet his mother, whom we had all loved? Did he remember us as he wandered in the place where he had been? Was there blood or pain? Was it a landscape of dull washed colours, or a red vastness with cliffs or forests or deserts or encroaching mist? Was anyone afraid? Did he wish to return there? Lazarus stood in the darkened room and sighed again, and something was broken. The great chance had escaped us, maybe never to return.
Beautiful in both languages. So is it yours in French, Colm?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's a curious business, isn't it? It's the last thing you think about when you're writing. I mean, I think if you started thinking about it, you know, you would go nuts. Oh, what's this going to be like in French? Is it going to be mine in French? I think this is really, you know, the sort of question that you must never ever think about, you know, and that just get on with the next sentence and make it right, and let Anna deal with the problem when she comes to it, if she comes to it in French. But if you started to think like this, I think you could become very self-important as well as you were writing your sentence. Oh, this is good in English, but in French it will be, and the German. I had a very good early experience of this, where there was a review of one of my books in Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. And the fact that I'm saying that might make you feel that I speak German. Well, I do not. I just know how to say Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. And it was a really long review, and someone translated it for me, and it said that I was, you know, that the novel was filled with philosophy and the meaning of life. And I thought this was very puzzling, because it wasn't. It was just a novel about a small town in Ireland. And I met Tilman Spengler, the German novelist, who had claimed to have read both the original and the translation. And I said to him, Tilman, what am I going to do about this? Because people are going to think I'm deep, that I had some deep thoughts about the meaning of our lives or something, that I'm an existentialist or something. And Tilman said, oh, don't worry. You see, the translation is so much better than the original. You see, what the translator did was he got all those little sentences of yours, and he made them really quite beautiful and long in German, so that everybody really thinks you're very smart. So just go on, you know, just don't deny it. Whatever you do, they'll send you home. So I've got an early lesson in realizing that really, you know, you can't ever take this seriously as a, you know, it's when these books appear in Dutch you get their real texture. I mean, shut up. I don't know, what have you...
Well, so if you have the chance, I mean, read Colm in German. So much better.
What about French?
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. I mean, I'm translating you all the time, but it's impossible, really. You know, Colm has all these wonderful short English words and makes long, winding, beautiful, elusive sentences, and he has this wonderful use of wonderful English preterite, you know, in which you can put infinite nuance, and, you know, something that takes place in 1 second can be an eternity, you know, and you can bend it any which way, you know, and fill it with all sort of meaning, and you do that all the time, and in French you just cannot. So my advice to you, if you have the chance, I mean, read Colm in English. So much better.
There's a Catalan translation which everybody says is very good of a story called A Long Winter. But I was doing interviews when that book came out, and the guy said to me, "You don't really know much about the Spanish Pyrenees or the Catalan Pyrenees." And I said, "Well, I sort of do know something about them." He said, "Well, no," he said, "no. You see, you have wild bears there in the 1950s. I said, "No, I don't." He said, "Yes, you do." And he opened it and showed me that it was os salvaje, which would be wild bear. But you see, the poor translator was working, and he saw wild boar, B-O-A-R. What's that in French? It's pork sangla. Sanglier?
That was a test.
Sorry, I'm going to take this, dear, because you're really...
Sanglier. And so he had just, instead of translating, when he saw the word boar, he thought it was bear. And he translated it as os rather than pork sangla. And it was just a small mistake, but then of course the journalist loved this, and he wrote a big article about it, and everywhere I went people said to me, "Oh, you're the guy with the boar and the bear." So everywhere I go in Catalonia, people just look at me and think, "A boar." Don't encourage me.